Hi, my name is Stephen Song. Today I'd like to start a new series entitled Journey with Bach. Bach is one of my favorite composers, and his music for the violin, in particular the solo sonatas and partitas, are like the Bible for the violin. If I could only choose one piece of music and I was stranded on an island and I had a violin to play, I would choose the music of Bach. It's moving, it's colorful, there's harmonies, there's melodies, there's fugues, there's dances, there's lamentations, there's everything you could ask for encompassed into all of these works. And so, in my 20 plus years of playing the violin, I've been able to study all six of these masterpieces. And I was inspired slightly by Nathan Cole, who did a Back to Bach series, and he went through and played every single one of these movements. And he talked a little bit about his approach. And I thought I'd do something similar. I would like to play through it and give my thoughts on each section. For some of the longer movements, maybe I won't be able to go through everything, but I thought this would be a sort of longer form and I could play and talk and more freely. And what I like to do with this episode is as I'm playing, I will also be teaching myself because as teachers, you're really teaching yourself at the end of the day. We're all learning, we're all on our own journeys. And so I hope by doing this journey, I will develop an even more sincere and personal understanding of the Bach sonatas that I already know and love. And so if this journey goes well, I hope to continue this same journey with the Zai sonatas, or maybe all 24 Paganini caprices, or even Beethoven Sonata Marathon. As you might know, I'm also a pianist, so I'm able to play the piano parts, and I am very much looking forward to recording them. I might do Vinyasa showpieces, look at each and every one. Of course, there are things that I'm still working on and developing in my playing, but I hope by being open and sharing my thoughts and process for all of this music, it will help me grow as well. I find that in the classical music world, of course, a lot of the learning and teaching happens between the teacher and the student. And it is very private, right? It's a private lesson. But I've always felt that I learn the most when I am my own teacher and I'm able to share my thoughts. And I find that this type of playing and learning and teaching and this giving back and forth doesn't happen as often as you would think. I find that a lot of the top violinists or artists in the world, they've reached a very high level, yes, and they share what they have to offer, but it's a little bit hard for someone who's still up and coming to really figure out what it is that works for them. And for me in my journey, I found that finding something that is personal to me is ultimately going to work. And no one else can really teach that. It's really up to myself and my own journey and development. And of course, many artists are embarking on this path and they found their own unique voices and their unique approach to the instrument. But I find that it's just not a lot of people share this journey with the audience. And of course, there are some people that are sharing their journeys, and I really applaud them. But I personally really value the journey so much more than the result. I find that in the classical music world, there's such an emphasis on preparing at a very high level, playing at a very high level, and that it just needs to be pristine. But how do we get there, right? Of course, we know it takes a lot of practice, but practice alone isn't enough, right? You need to know exactly what you're doing. You need to have the right mindset. You need to be in the right mood, first of all. I mean, if you aren't patient and willing to spend hours of your time diving deep into a piece and really figuring out what it is that's not going on, I mean, it's simply impossible to play at a very high level, right? And of course, there are people that have reached that very high level, but I find that even some of those people, that's not a knock against them, but they're not necessarily even sure exactly what they're doing that is makes them at such a high level. They just kind of naturally do it and they search this high artistic goal, which of course is great. But I guess I like to take a more hands-on approach, teaching and playing. So I hope you will enjoy this new series and come along on this journey with me with the violin, because the violin really is a lifelong pursuit and music, and it's beautiful. If you've noticed, I have posted a lot of my older recordings from when I was 14 to even last year. And the reason why I did that is because, again, it's a journey. Violin is a never-ending journey, like our lives. And there is no real endpoint, right? Again, we focus so much on trying to reach this goal of playing very, very perfectly. But what's the journey there? I mean, 99% of the journey, why is there not as much of a focus on that? And there's so much focus on just the end result. I'm not afraid to share my old playing because there are parts of it that are good, but there are parts that aren't quite fully developed. And for me, that's a really beautiful process, right? From seeing myself when I was 13, the way I played then, to the way I played when I was 22, and struggling with certain things, playing without shoulder rest, with shoulder rest, violin position, different repertoire, doing orchestral excerpts, chamber music. There's so much to learn there. And I've really come a very long way. And my idea of an approach to playing has never been just one way of doing it. And of course, when you're performing and you're a performing artist, all that really matters is that you have one way of doing it that works, right? It's not so important that you have a very wide understanding of how the violin works. It just matters that you can play well. But as a teacher, it's actually quite the opposite. You need to have a lot of different approaches to the instrument and understand how different people approach the instrument in different ways. And you need to, more than anything, have a very compassionate heart and a very curious mind, which I'm not saying as a performer you don't need. You do, of course, need to search as a performer, but it's not so important that you understand how other people deal with the instrument. And so, personally, I love performing, but I think more than anything, I love sharing the journey of playing the violin with other people. And so I hope that I can accomplish a little bit of both in this series. So I hope you will enjoy the journey, and I will see you on the first episode.